Good afternoon, everybody. I keep seeing the numbers going up. So if I end up being nervous, just accept the fact that that's just me being a normal human being. I'm going to do we did the technology of sharing screen, and I'm going to make sure it's still working. So can you all see this, the blue splodge that says be remarkable and increase revenue and profits? Perfect. Okay. So what I'm going to share with you today is a story. Now, the idea is I'm going to share, when we do this normally with clients, there's three parts to this. And I'm going to share part one. I tried to put a presentation together and some thoughts around doing three parts together, but we've only got a short amount of time. And these typically take 7 to 9 hours to do fully with clients and their teams. So what I'm going to do is start by introducing you to some people. And then I'm also going to then introduce you to a fictitious client and a process they went through with us. So I've used examples from real clients, but I've sort of anonymized them a little bit. And then what will happen at the end is that we'll be able to share back with you, a workbook that I'm showing you that you'll be able to fill in for yourselves. So it's not just about listening, it's about you listening to what I'm saying and already thinking that you're going to have to do this for yourselves. And this is part one.
The presentation, please. Or will we get the presentation, please?
Yes, you will, yeah.
By email?
Yep.
Thank you,
yep.
Thank you.
Absolutely no problem with that at all. And what you'll get is the presentation with the blanks for you to fill in for your exact own business and your own circumstances. So without further ado, we'll begin. And I better take my watch off so I can see what the time is so that I don't actually run over, because I'm prone to do that, because I do like to talk a lot. So I do apologise.
Just while David is taking his watch off and getting himself sorted, yes, absolutely, you will get the slides. And I should have mentioned at the very beginning, we are recording the session today because we want you listening rather than furiously taking notes. But the recording will only be circulated to those of you who have attended today. So please feel free to be as frank and candid with your questions. It won't go outside of the group that's on the call. And the presentation from last week and the recording is on its way. It's just we have a bit of a backlog at our side, but both will be coming out to you, both the slides and the recording for each webinar. Okay, sorry about that, David. Over to you.
Not a problem. Okay. So first of all, I'd like to introduce you to Joe. Not an ordinary Joe. Well, they were, but they went through this process and came out slightly different. So they started business 10 years ago. They made some money, spent some money, reinvested some money. Then, like all businesses, they got involved in sort of marketing and just ended up making less money than before. And then what we've all gone through, then came COVID. And the interesting thing with that is that having grown a business very effectively, where Jo had got herself stuck was involved in the doing of the business without actually ever taking time out to be able to really think about where she was going and why she was going there. So, and I think that happens to most businesses, and it certainly happens to a lot of the businesses we help and advise. And actually COVID in her world gave her time to stop and think. So, and now typical, my slides aren't going to change. Here we go. They will on this particular mouse. So I want to introduce you to a few people. So first I want to introduce you to a guy called Sun Tzu. Sun Tzu is from the 16th century, and he was a Chinese warrior. But the most important thing about Sun Tzu is that he understood the difference between strategy and tactics. And he said that strategy without tactics is the slowest route to victory, and that tactics without strategy is the noise before defeat. Now, I have no intention of being political on this call, but we will use COVID as an example of when you go into something that you don't know, that you've never seen before. It's very difficult to build a strategy, and you tend to do lots of tactics. And you may actually have a thought process around a strategy, and you may get it wrong. But what tactics, without any thought about strategy, do is they will guarantee that you will lose. Whereas a strategy, and we'll use the vaccine strategy that they did, where they went out with a row of tactics, and it's actually given them a thought process as to how they can deliver success and what success looks like. So strategy is about a plan, but it's about having goals and a success to go with it. And it's not about just going out there and doing stuff because you've heard it's a good idea. So Sun Tzu is the first. Another guy is Seth Godin. He's an entrepreneur, an author, and a speaker. He invented the terminology permission marketing, which is all about don't spam, talk to those who want you to talk to them. And he also, my business is Purple Frog, and we started before he wrote a book called Purple Cow, Purple Cow and Remarkability. He wrote that book in 2006. I would recommend you read it. And he talks about a USP, a unique selling point, doesn't exist. And it's actually what you do that others remark upon, which will become your differentiator. And I think that's really important, is that if you think about most businesses trying to come up with something which is different, it's really, really quite hard. There isn't anything dramatic that you can talk about that is going to be completely different than what your competitors do, unless you randomly have invented some technology that nobody else has come across yet. So I want you to think about that with your business as we go through this. And then the last guy the last of these guys I want to introduce you to, before I introduce you to myself properly, is Simon Sinek. He wrote a book called Find Your Why. It's about purpose, passion, and expertise to help you niche and sell better. The bit I want you to think about here is that what everybody knows about their business is what they do. They sort of sometimes know how they do it, or we hope they do, but they don't necessarily know why they do it. And even if they started a business with a thought process of why they're doing it, they've never necessarily thought about why they're doing it to really impact on the people that they're trying to engage with and sell to. So one of the things we're going to look at is finding the why, but finding the why in a different way by understanding why remarkability helps you get to this point. And then the final thing that we want to consider is the book, The Infinite Game, which basically says business is a continuum. And you are either playing the game or you're not. And what that really means is that if we think about businesses and where they are today, businesses set many goals. And the stock market itself has a lot to answer for, because it's set things which are really short term. Because we focus too much on profit in the short term rather than profit in the long term, or even revenues. And one of the problems with that is it makes you very tactical. Whereas what we want to be is a little bit more thought process around being strategic and playing the game and being in the game that you're in, whatever that game is, for a longer time, and until you're happy to leave it or move on to a different game. And then that is another area, but that's another area about pivoting your business. And almost by default, having a reason why within a given period of time, you know what you do today will not be fit for purpose for market tomorrow. So those are the guys that we're going to touch on as we go through this. And then there's me. I'm a strategist, marketer, and chartered accountant. I always have to apologize at that point. But what that's led me to believe, with reading the stuff and understanding what these guys have talked about, is that things like annual accounts, annual targets, annual budgets, they just are bad. They misfocus you. What you need is longer term, flexible goals that work on a rolling basis. This helps you create clarity. And what you should do is you should build hypotheses about your business. You should collect data to test those hypotheses. And everything you do around marketing and selling should be tested. You should create agile thinking in your business, and then you create this loop of continuous improvement and success. And one of the biggest things that is a mistake that most people make is that they go into the process of selling and marketing expecting success to be, I don't know, a return on investment is a good woody word that's used by most people. What I want you to think of is actually the process of going through this is going to generate success, because what you're going to do, more importantly than anything else, is understand what doesn't work for you. And believe me, most things don't work for most businesses. So, Jo's story. So how did she get to where she is today? So Jo currently turns over around about 2 million. She is really quite comfortable with that. She grew it through word of mouth marketing and referrals. She employs 20 people, but she did need to win more clients. That's where she'd got to. Everything was about, let's grow, let's get bigger, let's get better, let's do more. So she started doing marketing, LinkedIn, blogs, SEO, Google AdWords, basically everything that she'd seen others do and heard lots from seminars and so forth. And in her mind, there was this thing about 15 to 20% annual growth should be realistic. But to be honest, nothing seemed to work. There were leads, but most were poor quality. And she just seemed to be wasting her time and making less money than she ever did before. And then COVID arrived. So the advantage that, as I said before, the advantage of COVID is that what it did is it made her stop and think. It made her do something really important, which was write down the financial goals for the next 3 to 5 years. And so what you see as I go through these are the slides, when they're blank like this, these are the slides you're going to get in order for you to fill in for your business. And then she also had to then think about what has she done so far to actually achieve these. So clearly she wanted to survive until the end of COVID. And then she wanted to get back to where she was when she was slightly smaller. She wanted to be making at least 15% net profit. And she saw this figure as sort of 600,000 in a year. One of the things I'll talk you through, but you'll get a feeling for is, don't think 600,000 a year. Think about, she should be thinking, how could she get to 50,000 a month and sustain 50,000 a month? And equally, so that would average at 4 million in annual fees. And really, how could she get to 333,333 reoccurring in monthly fees in order to get there? So how could she get from where she is today to that particular place? And the question was, what's she done so far to achieve these? And when she really thought about it, she thought, well, nothing in reality. So that made her start thinking about the questions that she knew that people like Seth had been asking. So she then thought about what real goals are. And one of the things that most businesses don't do is they don't think about how many customers and clients they've got to actually win in order to achieve success. So in her world, she thought, well, that's probably about 80. And she calculated that by saying, well, what I really need is some clients that spend on average 50,000 in fees with me. And therefore, if I had 80 of those, doing that on average, that would get me to around about my 4 million. And I might not have touched on there, but she does recruitment. And I picked recruitment because next to estate agents and bankers, they're probably not the most popular people in the world. And for her to be able to think, well, how do I get to there, and where did things go wrong, left her to move to the next question. So one of the things I said to you at the beginning was that we all know what we do. So one of the things that is important to do is explain what you do in 50 words or less. And then when you've decided to, and when you've encapsulated it in 50 words or less, is then describe how you do what you do and describe it. So she said, well, she provided all types of employees for catering, companies, restaurants, hotels, events, and concerts. That's how if she was introduced today at a networking event and somebody said, what do you do? She'd say, we're a recruitment company. We provide all types of employees for catering companies, restaurants, hotels, events, and concerts. And how she did what she did. Well, they thought they were efficient, they were organized, they were very process driven. One of the things that the Purple Frog do as a business is we take some of these questions and take it out to their clients, and we ask them similar sort of questions as well, just to see if what they think they do is what their clients actually perceive they do, and also how they do it is how their clients perceive how they do it. So if we then go back to her trying to win these 80 new clients, the question was, well, who do you do it for? And this isn't about who do you do it for today, it's about who do you want to do it for. So describe your ideal customer client. And when you guys get these slides, one of the things I'm going to suggest is that if there's more people in your team, you do it with your team. When we run workshops with clients, we often have a team together, and in this particular cobbled together example of two or three clients we've done it for, there was probably 20 to 30 people who went through this process. But in Joe's world, it was a business that needed around 30 new employees a year, either on one or on many sites. A client who will use them in preference to job boards, one that will enable us to find candidates that are right for their business, and with a real focus on middle to senior management. So it's less about in the hospitality sector finding the waiters and the waitresses and the chefs and whatever, but actually more the management team. And that made her think that, well, actually, when she looked at her current client base, that's where she started, but actually she'd been sucked into sort of providing more stuff that they weren't really necessarily that good at. They sort of done it because it made money. And one of the reasons that she felt that then she was doing it because it made money was because she'd employed more people, so therefore she had more overheads to cover. And this made her think differently about what her ideal client should be when she comes back. So the then thing is, why do you do what you do? So the next question is, you need to write down at least 3 pains or problems a client has when approaching you for the first time. And if there's some of you who are on here selling a product, I would ask you to be thinking about the pains or problems that solves if the product is installed. So, and then the other part of this is how to address these issues. So she felt that and her team felt that it's when clients had been let down by others that they would come to them. They had a total lack of time internally, or really, in all honesty, they couldn't find good candidates. And what they did to address these issues, they did lots of meetings, they understood the client's culture, they really worked hard to build a relationship with the HR teams and whatever. And they never, ever sent a speculative CV. Now, I suspect all of you in business have had I get loads of recruitment companies sending me speculative CVs, even though I'm not in the market for employing somebody. So imagine that if you're the employment agency working for a business and you're sending speculative CVs, probably not a good position to be in, but they never did it. And then we sort of think, well, what we want to be is expert in something. So again, being specific is, what was Joe and her team expert in? They were expert at filling management posts, giving clients feedback, databasing of candidates, attention to detail, and market mapping. So actually being able to provide back real market insights to clients that otherwise they didn't know about or didn't have time to. Remember, in recruitment, their world is they live it. They see the market for what it is totally, whereas what a client does is only sees their micro area of a particular thing. So being able to go back with benchmarking reports and really informative advice around how that could be beneficial to the client was really something that could add real value. And then this comes back, there we go, who are your target personas? So for each key persona you deal with in your current clients, explain why you serve them better than your competitors. And this is about what makes you remarkable. And this is where I'm going to go back to the Simon Sinek about what, how, and why. So if you know what you do and you know how you do it, if you're selling a service in today's world, and I don't know how many of you on this call sell a service, most work is now done, most of the buying process is now done online before anybody reaches out to you. And in the service sector, people who are looking to purchase will go through what you do to make sure it sort of ticks the box of what they're thinking. They'll look exactly how you do it, because what they want to understand is how you interact with them so that they start to get a flavour of understanding how you work. So what have they got to do in order to make the engagement a potential success for them? What they don't want to do is be sold to. So if we think about the how and the what, and then we think about remarkable, and why I think Seth Godin and Simon Sinek work well together is your remarkability helps uncover your why. So what she said is that we're transparent. We don't push just any candidate to fill a role. We focus on culture as well as talent, and we develop a continuous feedback process unique to each client. And if, in this world, the continuous feedback process was all around explaining the journey that the candidate was going through and all the different candidates they've got through the process to the HR team. We went back out and we asked these similar questions to the clients. And one of the things that stood out was that the one thing that they 100% agreed with is they didn't push any irrelevant candidates. They had a fantastic feedback process and they absolutely adored it, but they weren't quite so hot on the culture that they thought they were. So that enabled Joe to really think, well, cool. One of the things we need to do more is build a little bit more effort into approaching the client's culture and understanding how better we can do that. But this is what made them remarkable. And when you think about your remarkability, what you need to do is you need to position it into what the future of your business is. And whilst we may have some goals, so she wants to get to 4 million turnover, she wants to make this 600,000-ish a year profit. It's about explaining how the world will change in the next 5 years. In that period, how is their world going to change? So what are the things that are going to come in the way? What things should they action now in order to compete in the future? And if they were 2 times the size, which is what their goal was, what should they be doing now that they're not doing? So what do they need to be doing differently? And a little bit of just thing is that there's a terminology we use called acting up. And one of the challenges businesses have when they're trying to move from position A to position B, however big that scale up is that we all think about our problem today and we never think about the problem tomorrow. Whereas if you want to be a £4 billion recruitment agency, you need to be thinking like a £4 million recruitment agency and be doing stuff, maybe not with the resources and the cash and the staff available, but you need to be doing that so clients perceive that you're already that size. They don't really care about what size you are now and your growth projects. They just care about where you'll go, how you can help them. So in their world, it was all about technology will be more important. We'll need to add more service. Training will be more important, and candidate will need more help. What should they action now in order to compete in the future? Win exclusive deals so they can invest in the client. So rather than always having to pitch for every single time there was an opportunity, is how could they become exclusive within a client? And then use technology that links clients and candidates better, with them as being the conduit between the two. And then really, how could they use their data better is one of the things they were thinking about. And how could they have more leaders in their business so they weren't just quite so reliant on Joe? And I think the data element here was really key. So they had a fantastic process. The clients loved the process. They had better market data on candidates in their area of senior management than most of their competitors other than the really big players. But they were far better at niching that candidate data into specific clients, but they hadn't actually been doing it. So what this enabled them to do was to work out how could they take this data and make that work more effectively for them. So then we asked them, well, what are your barriers to success? And those barriers to success are internal and they're external. And internally, they felt, thinking about it, that there was a lack of focus. That they did sometimes feel that they couldn't afford technology. And one of the reasons they couldn't afford technology is they've been spending a lot of money on trying to win these new businesses, these new clients. They'd spent quite a lot of money, and in this instance, they were spending £30,000 a month on Google AdWords, which when actually analysed generated diddly squat in the essence of real clients that they could grow based on their ideal client profiles. What it did get them was loads of small restaurants, catering businesses and whatever, asking for temporary chefs and so forth. And they'd sort of morphed their business from where they'd started into something which was generating fees, but it wasn't actually generating anything of any real value. They clearly needed some leadership. And the other big thing that everybody forgets, and if you had your talk last week on brand communications, I think it's really key to understand that the way you talk about your business on the outside is also the way you need to talk about your business on the inside. So Jo had sort of lost that ability to communicate with her team in a manner which had enabled them to really understand the why and the purpose of the business. And she employed lots of millennials, and today's millennials really do purpose. So then it was about how do we take some messaging for them and help them take that internally as well. Externally, it's clients go bust. And the biggest fear about not only affording technology was that actually technology might make them redundant. But that also came back to that element of the fact that in essence, clients really wanted somebody to be the pin between the technology and the candidate. So that the clients wanted the technology, but they didn't want to be the keeper of the technology. So that was so whilst they saw that as a very success, that actually became an opportunity that they were able to move forward with in really good positive conversations. So this comes back to remarkability and the why. And remarkability. So Jo's team were great at communicating the process, and clients loved that because no other companies seem to really care. What their purpose was, which this helped them uncover, was to support HR departments and business owners to grow their management teams with recruitment strategies that built on their core beliefs. And the core beliefs, i.e. the culture of the businesses they were trying to support. And their why that came out of this was to change the perception of the recruitment industry so that it seemed to be more professional service, delivering excellence and not just bodies to fill job roles. So where did that take us next? So having uncovered this, that was really good, really useful to Jo. And she was able, with her team, to put in place better internal comms. They all had a reason to understand why they got out of bed in the morning, which was to be, they were going to change the perception of the recruitment industry. So this is beyond just what they were doing for their clients. This was a really big thing to them. And then they knew that what their role was on a day-to-day basis was to support the HR departments of the clients they've got. So that got them to a position of understanding how they were going to go about now regrowing the business after COVID. So what's next? Well, there's two key things that are next. There's messaging and helping people buy. Now, this is a separate bit. And the first one took me, which wasn't too bad, that took me 23 minutes to get through. You can see that if I did another one, we'd have been completely running out of time, but I'm going to touch on this so you understand what this is about. Messaging in a business is about articulating your remarkability in a manner which resonates with the personas that you've highlighted, and then answers the questions they have and the concerns they have during the buying process at the point that they're doing their research. Because what we're trying to do in this is we're trying to help people buy from you. And the next stage of our process is for people to understand that marketing and selling doesn't exist anymore in the reality of what it was, and that what companies need to do is help people buy from them. So how you position yourself using your how, your what, how and why is powerful messaging in order to help people go on a buyer's journey. And one of the things I'll just quickly touch on here is because a lot of people say, well, how can you make a message which fits to the different areas of my business? So if we stick with Jo, the thing with Jo is that while she was in the hospitality industry in particular, that what she was doing is she was speaking to people who were in very large organizations and some that were in sort of more medium-sized, some who had big head offices, some who were multinational hotels, and some that were pretty unique little, they were nice startups run by a chef, but there were core businesses that she knew she could help grow and her team could help grow. So it's about how do you get that messaging to do for the different personas. So the one thing that I want you to think about here is mind maps. And one of the things we work with is getting people to see mind maps, and how you build the core of your messaging is your what, where, when, how, why at the middle. And if we were to translate into your website, that would be the core of your website. And then how you use the mind map to go out to communicate different messages to different people and create a buyer's journey, which helps them uncover how you can help them solve the problems that they've got, as opposed to you trying to put marketing and advertising messages out that in reality bounce off most of the people that you're trying to talk to. And the last part of this bit is that selling is not about closing and converting. It's very easy to fall into that trap of saying I need to get somebody over the line and I know I need to win 80 clients. So the next challenge is how do you use words, nurturing, and the whole team in a manner which enables the client to make the buying decision themselves. So that's the next stage that we go through with clients. And then the other stage we go through is numbers and lifetime value. So numbers takes that real goal, that 80, and it takes that and says, well, it may be that you want to turn over £5 million in X or £4 million in X amount of years' time. It may be that you want to be doing X amount of work, but in reality, what you want to be doing is you want clients who give you recurring fees, or if you're selling products which are one-off purchases because you're a retailer, you've got to come up with a concept which enables you to re-engage with those people in order to sell them more. So you become part of the process of their life. So therefore you get more money out of the initial bang that you spent on advertising and marketing, because you can't not do it, but I want you to think of it differently. So you get more value for your money. So in Jo's case is that £4 million of turnover actually equated to something in the region of £39 million worth of lifetime value. So she was actually able to see that suddenly she was trying to win much bigger numbers, and why she should be investing the money wisely and where she should be investing it in order to get to success. And what we also do is we tip the standard sales funnel upside down. So it's about how do you make numbers work for you, and you reduce the level of money that you need to spend on marketing because you're more effective at converting the leads that you are generating, because you know you don't need to win as many as you thought you did, because that is the problem with the traditional sales and marketing funnel, is it does focus people too much on trying to just win leads and not understand how to convert them. So they're the two bits that I decided that I didn't have time to share today, because what I wanted us to do was to be able to go through the first part, which was this bit about the question of your remarkability and why, and understand what questions you guys had around that, so that I can answer any questions you have from there.
David,
does that mean I stop sharing?
You can do, by all means. Thanks so much for that. It really gets you thinking, actually. At this point, I'm going to open up to our attendees and ask if anybody wants to volunteer their particular situation or a particular challenge they've got, or indeed any questions regarding David's slides. Please feel free to unmute yourself and just start talking.
First of all, I'm Deborah, and thank you very much, David. I found that really useful. I have a business that sells services, and a lot of what you said resonated with me and was helpful. One of the questions I wanted to put to you was, you know, what you said about talking about yourself internally in the same way you talk about yourself externally. So normally in a company you have people in sort of sales and marketing. So what do you call them now if they're doing a different kind of function? If you want to signal that you want them to behave in a different kind of way, sometimes the title kind of suggests a certain sort of behavior.
So when you say you're in service, can you just tell me what type of service it is, so I can?
Yeah, we sell services. We have a style of education, and we sell that into schools globally. And they become, the lifetime value comes because they become accredited schools, and then they stay with us and continue to buy additional services from us over the long term. So lifetime value is really important for us, and resonates very much with what you were saying about the sort of Joe circumstance of it's quality that we need in all of this. But in terms of whether you're trying to, so in terms of us working with schools, you know, it's a kind of question about everybody. What we suggest as a style of education is pretty much universally liked. It's just as a kind of urgency factor about deciding to switch from what you've been doing into a new way of working, which is part of our problem.
Okay, so one of the things that's really key is the onboard. So in the service sector, one of the key things that people are looking for in the how do you do it is how do you onboard them. So it's what happens next to me when I pick the phone up. So rather than, and everybody's different, so I'm just going to give you an example, is rather than thinking of people who are in sales and marketing as people who are there to convert that person, they're there at minimum to onboard them as well. So they become part of the onboarding process, so they become part of the client experience. So what a lot of our clients do is they create a internal communications around client experience, and client experience extends all the way through how they get a client on board, to how they continually manage that client, and how they then use that client to increase the number of referrals they get. And the sales and marketing team are deemed to be part of that client experience. So therefore you start treating prospects as clients, as opposed to people who sell to.
That's really helpful.
That actually resonates with a presentation that we had last year, where we talked about sales and customer service has been the same thing if done correctly, and that kind of encapsulates that. Because sometimes people can be off put by having their job description as selling. It kind of is a bit of a dirty word, but actually if it's incorporated as part of the client experience, and obviously done correctly to exceed client expectations, then you can see how a lot of people that would resonate better with a lot of employees actually.
Yeah. And again, if you think about people, you know, in people who've got products and the products are being delivered, one of the things that lets down client experience in today's world is it's not as bad as it used to be, but it used to be really bad, was the actual last part of the chain, which was the delivery. And particularly if it was outsourced to people like FedEx, who used to never deliver on time and whatever. So your whole brand fell apart just on the last part. So it didn't matter how good your marketing and sales message was, you didn't get any lifetime value, because whilst people bought you at the beginning, they didn't buy you again. Yeah. So it's about how do you get the whole thing to go through, and almost think of, rather than, and again, one of the things we discuss in the lifetime value bit is less about a sales funnel and more about a sales flywheel. So it's actually how do you get that going, which I like but it's how do you get people through a funnel and then extend that out the other side, so actually that you're still engaging with clients as importantly as you would with a new prospect. Don't do what banks do.
Anybody else? Thank you so much for that, Deborah. It's a really good question. Anybody else that wants to volunteer anything? I think, Brian, you just unmuted yourself, I think.
Yeah, thanks very much, David. It's been really stimulating listening to you. What advice could you give around growth? So if you're good at something, it feels like there's always a pressure to keep growing. There's usually a demand to do more of what you're doing, or to actually solve if you're problem solving all the time, to solve everybody else's problems, or they'll bring these problems to you. But what do you think about the natural sort of human characteristic of we must be bigger?
Okay, so one of the things I would look at that is I would always look at every business is that you have to have an exit plan. And the exit plan says whatever that time span is, it's 3 to 5 years, possibly whatever. But what that does is it says where would I be in 3 to 5 years time if we're talking of a and it doesn't even matter if it's a bigger business, but it's where do I want that to be in 3 to 5 years time. And that's why I alluded to it in the other part of the presentation, was that nothing stays the same, and everything we're doing today will be different tomorrow. So the solutions and the problems we solve today won't be the solutions and problems we solve tomorrow. And at some point, we're going to have to leave the business we've currently got, maybe called the same, but it will be a different business than what it was 3 to 4 years ago, potentially, or 10 years ago, because the solutions you'll be doing. So when you talk about growth, my view is then to say, well, what would I be comfortable with in my own skin of getting to achieve over a given period of time, based on the capacity that I have got available? Because too many people try to grow at a pace they can't manage. And there's two curves of business growth. There's logarithmic, which we all do when we start business. We talk to our family, friends, and everybody, and we grow at a reasonably fast rate, and then it plateaus. Typically for professional services businesses, it plateaus about 750 to £1 million. They solve the problem by merging with other professional services businesses or bringing in other people with fee books and whatever. There's the exponential growth curve, which is the one that thinks about lifetime value, but it's also how do you reach out to strangers? So that takes a lot of investment and a lot of thinking around how you're going to do that. So my answer to your question is the growth is what your risk profile yourself is. And that's what you should set yourself, and that's what you should be comfortable with. Don't listen to what other people are telling you is you need to do.
So decide the level of risk you're prepared to take and work to that. Yeah.
And when I use those two curves, there's a lot of businesses really quite comfortable with getting to a certain size and plateauing and being happy there. They then have to pivot in order to stay relevant and in the game, because you will just die eventually. So they evolve their business but staying the same size. Others have something which is elementally scalable, and therefore they look for scale. Very difficult to scale a consultancy, much easier to scale a product. You can scale a consultancy, I'm not saying you can't, but it's a different challenge.
Yeah, thank you very much.
That's a great question, Brian. Anybody else want to unmute themselves and volunteer anything or ask David any questions?
Hiya, I'm Malika,
Hi,
and
Malika.
right now I'm into life coaching, following that. Now my previous business has pretty much went completely down, so I've been coaching, but now I'd like to take it a bit further. So it's sort of a startup, and right now I'm trying to basically take it to different councils. What is the best way for me to approach different councils? Because the life coaching program that I've designed is for 16 to 25 years old. And knowing that it's not going to be pretty much accessible for people, for for the youth to be coached for free. So I'm just trying to make it accessible for them, free for them, but also being subsidized by the council. How can I approach actually with this idea?
Gosh, that's a good one.
Thanks.
Yes. So there's two sides here. So you've got two things. One, you need to engage. So your first stage is you need to engage with the councils as to think about why would the council want to engage you? So what challenges are you going to help the council overcome?
Yeah, I think it's my aim right now, following the pandemic and so on. It's the encouraging youth and young people, the new young generation to achieve their own goals, to find opportunities, to follow their dreams, to really go for it, rather than waiting and for an opportunity, is to sort of help them create their own opportunity.
David, you've got a notion of kind of primary and secondary customer there, haven't you? You're kind of promoting yourself to two different entities. You've got the people that can perhaps have the budgetary control, which is the councils if they're going to subsidize this, and then you've got the actual consumers of the service. I mean, there's a couple of things there, and I mean, David is the expert here, but there's a couple of things. I don't know whether you're aware of the Kickstart program, where Department of Work and Pensions and government and some of the LEPs are involved in getting 16 to 24-year-olds that are at long-term risk of being unemployed back into work. It sounds like it's something that resonates with that. I mean, I could certainly, in my capacity kind of working with Oxlab, I could certainly reach out to some of the local authorities on your behalf, Malika.
Oh, that'd be real.
I can't make any promises, but at least I can float it and make an introduction.
That'd be really, really nice. I mean, I'm from London as well, so I've started now. So what I did is a crammed 2 weeks life coaching program, which is basically a coaching program that I've learned over the years that is accessible, I would say, for the high end. But nobody's going to pay £2,000 per coaching session. But there is a different business model that can be used. So our generation, like you said, the 16 to 25, the people from the Kickstart scheme, can access to it. And what I'm trying to do is, knowing that there are certain amount of fundings available from every single council around the country, where they are open to support like local businesses or new startup and so on, rather than obviously this next generation being at home waiting for a job or waiting for an opportunity. So it's really me to go there. But yeah, that'll be great.
If you want to drop me an email, so it's just andrea.collins@oxfordshirelet.com. I can follow that up, but I don't want to steal David's thunder.
Of course.
Any recommendations there as well?
Yeah, my view on that would be, so you've got the councils, so you've got to help them. You've got to help them see the problem that you're solving for them.
Correct.
If they're going to get involved.
Exactly. Yeah. Correct.
But what you already have, which most businesses don't, is you already have a why. So your why is you want to help.
Exactly.
So you need to frame your messaging in the way you talk to them about why you're doing, not what you're doing,
Yes.
The fact that your coaching is irrelevant, what you're doing is you want to open opportunities for young people.
Yeah.
How can the council help you do that? That's
True.
how you frame it.
Yeah. Yes, absolutely.
Your separate challenge is then going to be to work out how you engage with the
Exactly. Yeah,
25-year-olds.
I'm working on that. I'm working really. Now I am working. I came across a person who actually was head of the council, and I've managed to grab. I met her. It was an online course that we did via Zoom. Now I know her first name, but her second family name, who was in charge of the funding, I couldn't find it. Now I'm chasing. I'm trying to investigate and find out the names of that person who is in charge. But yes, exactly. I'm with you. Yeah.
Hopefully, Malika, we can we can at least point you in the right direction.
Yes.
I mean, David, what we haven't said is what we haven't got on your slides, and when you pass them across to me, what would be really good is if you put your contact information on there and perhaps your LinkedIn as well.
Yep.
I'm certain that certainly Escalate clients and individuals like Malika who are coming in from further afield will want to at least connect with you and run any issues past you in the future. So that would be really useful. But we'll see what we can do, Malika. Is there anybody else that wants to ask a question? There's so much to think about in this presentation. I think we've got Bridget. Are you there, Bridget?
Thank you, David. I found that really, really interesting. And I really hope you do come back and do the whole messaging bit as well. But for me, I want to get back to something you said near the beginning, where you were talking about, not focusing on the annual accounts and all that kind of stuff, but creating these hypotheses and collecting data, etc. So is that, just so that I make sure I understand that, is that kind of like almost creating what you think your base case, best case, worst case scenarios might be with your business, and then perhaps overlaying that with market trends and things and saying, well, if the market continues to follow this trend, this is what's going to happen? Is that the kind of hypotheses that you meant?
That is one. So the bit about the numbers is everybody makes that same mistake of saying, well, we use round figures because it's easy. We did 1 million last year, therefore the MD and the sales director say, well, we're going to do a 15% increase, and they're going to do 1.15 million. The problem is, if they've got nobody in the pipeline or the wrong types of clients, there's no thought process as to how they're actually going strategically, how they're going to get there. So that's why they don't work, because it's a fixed point. We only have annual accounts so that we can pay tax. They don't exist for you to run your business. What exists for you to run your business is real-time data showing you where your profits are coming from. So the types of clients that you make profit from, the types of clients where you can add value so that you're getting more from them in the future. So if you're selling a service, the objective of not only delivering a great service is to understand what have you got to do next to get the next project or whatever out of them, or if you're on a retainer, why they're going to pay the next month's fee. And if you're selling products, it's understanding what else can you add value in the product chain for them to come back to buy additional products from you. So it's not using a methodology of cross-selling. So it's about building, and almost think of it as what we do in most clients is we build them a 12-month rolling forecast. So when January's finished in 2021, you start thinking about what 2022 is going to look like, so that it becomes a continuum of business. So you start seeing the ramp up, because you're always going to get bits which drop down. And the classic example of bad annual accounts is large corporates who you'll get a good deal out of at the end of every quarter because they haven't quite managed the quarter's turnover, so they need to report that on the stock exchange, or wait till the year end, especially in B2B. So if you want to deal with a company like HP, if their year ends 31st of October, do a deal with them in September. You will get a massive discount.
Okay, that's brilliant. Thank you very much.
That's perfect. Anybody else? Any more questions for David? David, I think you've left everybody with so much to think about. What strikes me is I've communicated to certainly escalate clients about these peer-to-peer sessions that we're going to start doing probably late March, early April, where we'll be establishing small cohorts of business owners, senior managers who work together over the course of 2 or 3 workshops, so quite intensive. So they get an expertise from a specialist such as yourself, but then they also rely on their peers, their trusted network that we're establishing with that cohort. It strikes me that we could do certainly more intensive work during one of those peer-to-peer workshops, if that would be something you'd be interested in. I think there's a number of clients on this call that, you know, would benefit from that. Obviously they have to be Escalate clients, so we have to have them signed up to the program, but those workshops would be 2 to 3 hours, so they're quite intense, but you've got the benefit of somebody like David's expertise, but then also reaching out to your network, those trusted individuals that are part of that cohort. So I think that's something you and I should talk about, David, with a view to getting you back in kind of March, April time to expand further on this, if that's okay.
That's fine with me. Yep, not a problem.
Okay, everybody, as I mentioned, there's a backlog in terms of getting the presentation from last week loaded, which Jane was so good and got her slides to me and everything. The hold up is on our side, but I'm hoping to have the recording sent out this week with her slides, and then the same with David as well, because you know, as he said, hopefully he's given you food for thought and you can start completing these slide decks with with reference to your own organisation. But David, that was really thought-provoking. Thanks so much for your time.
Not a problem. Enjoy. I hope you all enjoyed it.
Thank you.
Perfect. Thanks everybody. Enjoy the rest of your day. Take care.
Thanks so much. Bye.
Thank you. Bye. Thanks so much.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.